Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Stardust. It's Robbie here, and in today's episode, we will be talking to Dino Athanassiou about his participation as animation supervisor and main story artist on location during the production of the first installment of Hunger Games. I'm not doing this alone, though. We have very special guests. In fact, we have our very first guest here today. The delightful presence of the Into the Arena podcast. Welcome to Holly and Emily.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you. I'm Holly, by the way.
Emily.
We're so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having us.
It's great to have you on the show, for sure. Yeah.
Thanks so much for coming. It's a very special moment. Again, you're the very first guest that we have, so absolutely our pleasure to have you here. So I'd like to start with a few questions, particularly for you, Emily and Holly. Can you tell us a bit more about your YouTube channel and about yourselves? Do you breathe Hunger Games all day long? How does that work?
Yeah, recently it definitely feels like it. We've been super fans since, well, before the movies were coming out. And then there was kind of, all the movies came out and there was a bit of a dormant sort of period. And then especially in 2020 with the release of Suzanne Collins' new Hunger Games book, Ballad, the prequel, there's just been a lot more activity online. So we started our podcast and we're doing trivia, we're doing book read-alongs. So it does feel like we're kind of living and breathing Hunger Games all day long.
Oh, how was your trivia today, by the way? You just had a trivia, is that right?
Yeah, it was good. It was great. It was all about food from the Hunger Games. So it's getting very detailed, but people know everything about these books. So they're really excited to participate.
Is there a Hunger Games cookbook or something like that?
Yeah, I think there might be a couple, but yes, there is
Amazing.
An unofficial one. Yeah.
So tell me, is 100% of your fandom time dedicated to Hunger Games, or are you also into other movies and series?
Yeah.
Holly and I are pretty into Twilight. We met through the Twilight fandom initially. That's how we kind of connected. So yeah, we love Twilight as well. I think that's probably our other big fandom, but Hunger Games is a big one for us.
So I heard you have some questions for us or for Dino, is that right?
Yes, we have a few questions.
Yeah, I was kind of curious if there was anything that you worked on in the film that didn't really make it in, or you wish we could have seen more of as fans.
Most of what I worked on kind of found its way into the movie, I would say. There were a few little things where Sheena and I would go back and forth on in terms of how would within the capital city, right before the actual introduction of the mutts, how would that be? Like Gary was quite keen on having this wire mesh appear on the table within the control room, and so that became clear. So I would do a couple of sketches to show my guys. For example, I've got, I think, a few thumbnails here. Where let's see now. Yeah, so there were times when I would do like a quick sketch of how the mutts would appear. They would be docile and asleep. That was one of the things I did. And then so another one again in the control room where you'd see the mutts. Very quick little thumbnail sketches to kind of see how, in my mind, I had an idea that they'd be almost kind of cute at first, that waking up, before they would actually manifest within the real world. They'll be in the control room as wire mesh animated elements being controlled by the operator, and that was something that Gary, again, this is his incredible clear direction, the way he knew what he wanted right off the bat. And so the other thing was I had one of the other producers, I think, and they're working closely with Gary and with Sheena, and they were asking me to come up with maybe some ideas of how the mutts would appear from the ground upwards, almost like they're digging themselves out. So I came up with some rough designs and ideas of this kind of organic magic plasma, and they would just basically burst through, So as the kids were running, these things would just appear. So they're already being chased by the first mat, the alpha male, if you like, with the arrow. And that was one of the main things, is to make it prominent in a way that the leader, if you like, was the one with the arrow in its neck that tries to get Peter at the beginning, and then the rest would follow suit. But the rest would appear from under the ground, and so I had one or two stabs at it, got the okay, and then they ended up using something like that in the finished version. And so for me, it's a great way to, even a rough little sketch, I mean, there was I remember being in one of the meetings in Australia, and I had to wait while they were talking about or discussing another particular project that I had nothing really to do with. But I remember Gary talking about the kind of design that he wanted for the scout ships that were hovering around looking for tributes and stuff, and or for basically it's a hunter craft, that would hover above the treetops, and he was kind of clear about what he wanted, and he said this design or this craft needs to feel and look as if it was from the same substance as the cornucopia, edifice, if you like. And so for me, I started to do a quick sketch, and I think I was showing them, but they were not that interested, the guys that was there, and they went off in another direction, and that took quite a few weeks while they came up with this kind of almost like a Star Wars designed ship. And then when eventually they showed it to Gary, he said, no, that's not what I want. That's not what I want. Back and forth. And in the end, they kind of went with another company to produce something that was very close to what Gary wanted. And really, I mean, I never really said anything to anyone, but the design they ended up with was very similar to the sketch I had done that very day. So I think what we can learn sometimes from these situations or these experiences, a rough sketch, can sometimes nail a problem that would normally take weeks and weeks to kind of realize. Sometimes there's producers and there's directors out there that they have a rough idea of what they want, but they can't quite visualize it. So they rely on people like myself to kind of come up with something, so they can say, yeah, like that, or not quite, but yeah, we're getting there. And then we can go to all the other departments that start to build the 3D models, etc. Because that process takes quite a long time.
No, it's great. I love seeing all the little sketches and just hearing all the details.
Cool. Now, I'm super curious about you said you made a ship. I'd like
I just designed a quick, very quick, fun, rudimentary craft. And but it was, in my mind, I was thinking of the cornucopia, that if that was to take off, from the ground, what kind of craft would it be? What kind of shape would it? Because it's quite distinct, the cornucopia, where the kids end up running. And I was very fortunate to be around that set, and I was storyboarding there, and I was with the crew while I was shooting. And it was so much bigger than you could ever imagine, very difficult to climb on top. You could see that I was stood next to a ladder in one of the pictures there. And the other thing is, when you're there, you can touch. This thing was solid. I mean, it was really, but it was very difficult, very slippery, slidey. So it made perfect sense that the mutts couldn't climb up on this thing, So once the kids had reached the cornucopia and climbed above on top, they were to a certain point safe. I think it's really amazing when you're lucky enough to kind of be there on location to get a sense. Like in working on Tom and Jerry, the Tom and Jerry movie, we were there on the location storyboarding, so we were able to see, be there while they were shooting and get a sense of the whole world that was shaping up for the film. Yeah.
You talking about the hovercraft? reminded me that I have a couple of visual effects storyboards from Hunger Games, and on one of them, I think I've showed this to Holly before, on the back, somebody just sketched out a hovercraft.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I wonder who did that.
It wasn't me, that's for sure. But no, because I think my sketch never got submitted, because sometimes you can work in an environment that it's kind of segregated, the departments are, sometimes it's like a family group and everyone's together and everyone is sharing ideas, and other times it can be the opposite to that. And in that respect, it was a little bit difficult. Jumping ahead probably was one of the things that was kind of a little bit difficult on that film politically, so but having said that, I think once you sort of can connect with the director and the VFX supervisor, then I think you're good, because there's a good camaraderie and togetherness, in terms of collaboration.
So would you say just having that open discussion with everyone would have been the most challenging part of working on it, or what would you say was like the difficult part?
No, it was. It was never difficult when I was collaborating and working with Gary or Sheena, because again, they're two very strong creative individuals, and so they were very clear, and they, and if you kind of understand the chain of command, and you can appreciate what your role is, on the film. If the director's kind of looking for something specific, and providing you're not doing anything that's going to break the bank, that you're going to suggest something that's going to be impossible to do. A lot of the time it's about the working relationship, and whether that gels or not. And and often it does, but you get the odd occasion when it doesn't. I think sort of egos and clash, certain things clash, or it becomes very political. I remember one point, one of the producers, not part of the Lionsgate and not part of Gary's or not part of Sheena, had told me, you keep quiet, don't say anything. And it was like, what? And then no sooner had he said that, Gary, it was on a voice call, and Gary Ross said, "Where's Dino? Is Dino there? I want to speak to Dino." And so this producer has said that, don't say anything, had egg on his face basically, because it was almost like God waving his finger saying, yeah, you see. But so sometimes these things happen. I think if you go into any situation with an open heart and a desire to do good stuff, to do your best, I think that's all you can expect, really. And I think you aim for 100%, 150%, and because sometimes the idea of good enough is not really going to make it. It's not necessarily going to always get you another job. And it's not that you have to always bust your gut and kill yourself in order to get something done, because it doesn't have to be that difficult. I think the work itself is challenging, yes, but it's also really enjoyable. When it goes well, when everything gels and people appreciate each other, then wonderful things can happen, Great magic there, collaborating with for me with Sheena and Dougal and with Gary. It was a privilege, I have to say, it was a privilege.
So I guess besides that, and besides getting to have espresso with Gary Ross, what would you say was your favorite part about working on the Hunger Games?
I just love the challenge of you meet say someone like Gary, and he says, look, I have this idea, this is kind of how I see the whole thing happening with the chase. It's got to be like an explosive start and a build up, and then the challenge is to make the whole chase exciting, and the build up of all of this. So when I put pencil to paper, and you start with a blank canvas, anything is possible. It could go either way. It could be a disaster. You could go on the wrong tangent, or it can be great. And I was very lucky that everything that Gary was telling me, I was soaking in. I would even record his voice at times, and I'd say, Gary's all right if I, because yeah. So we'd be in a car driving to the set, and he'd be telling me, oh, Dino, I kind of see this, I want this, and he's driving us, and I'm listening, and I'm writing stuff down, doing thumbnails, and so for me, I'm really big on trying to get a very clear brief so that I don't waste people's time and end up, as I say, going in the wrong direction. So I guess that was the challenge. If I knew that I could grab the audience from the get-go. So when I started to design and rough out the boards, it was the beginning of that chase. When Katniss and Peter are walking in the woods, it's getting dark. So I was boarding all of that section, and then right up until the point when Peter gets attacked, when the mutt leaps out. And I was very happy with the end results, because when I was boarding that, I was very clear that this thing has to almost leap out from nothing, and grab not only Peter by surprise, but the whole audience. And
I remember that moment in theater. It was so good. I was sitting next to my sister. We knew it was coming, and I was trying to prepare for it, but I think she jumped 2 feet out of her seats. It was so good.
No, it's great. I was very, very happy. I mean, sorry to scare you guys, but I was very happy, and I think the animators did an amazing job. I was so lucky. I had a great crew that I was working with, and the funny thing is with that, we had a little bit of time at the beginning, and I would do a little bit of not necessarily a master class, but a little bit of a training or teaching, and I would show examples of certain films, and I even showed them a little clip of Avatar at the time, and I scared them a little bit by saying, look, these guys had probably a year or 2 years to prepare, and look at the detail of their animation and the performance, of the creatures and everything else. And I said, your work that you do today, this week, this month, this year, is going to be compared with Avatar in many ways in terms of the creature animation that you end up animating. And so that's the level we have to reach, and I mean, they were a little bit fearful at the beginning, but they would produce beautiful stuff. And then what we would break it down and analyze, is that ear, is it what we would call twinning, when if the character would move, is the direction of the head leading the ears, overlap and everything, and details with the muscle, and would the mutt's arm and muscle, would it be spasm, given a spasm or movement? Where was the weight? Was the weight in the right place? All these things we were analyzing and breaking down to the most minute of detail, so that we could end up with something that looked convincing, and certainly with the guy that with all the guys that were animating each section, what we try to do is kind of have a little bit of continuity, where one animator would be animating 1 or 2 or 3 shots back to back, and then the next animator would be doing a similar thing with his shots, so that he had at least some sort of continuity of movement. And at the same time, we were developing the Tracker Jacker sequence, which in the end ended up being sort of finalized by another studio, but we had already prepared all the cycle animation, So what I was doing was, when you're dealing with character animation and VFX animation, like the Tracker Jacker, for example, the swarm of bees, initially the design of those were quite a bit bigger. I think I would have liked them to be a bit bigger, but Gary's quite specific, they should be more realistic. But the bigger the bees were, the Tracker Jackers were, the more kind of monstrous they would be, and the more you would believe that they could kill you. One could almost kill you, or at least a group of them could. So I was working closely with one of the chaps that was dealing with the software called Massive, where he takes all the individual cycle animation, plugs them into the computer, and creates variations. And that becomes the swarm of tracker jackers. And at the same time, I would then go to at the beginning, I would go to the individual animators and say, look, I've got this guy over there, he's a new guy here, he's just arrived, but he's a whiz, he's amazing on massive, and he's going to do an incredible job. And so there was this like healthy competition, right? And I was saying to the guy who was dealing with the massive, I said, look, listen, your animation is going to be memorable. What you do with your section, it's going to be a memorable part of the sequence, So I don't see you as someone who's just plugging in numbers, I see you as a character animator creating a performance, and he really got excited, and he was loving it. And I was saying to the guys that were animating each individual cycle of animation for the tracker jacker wasp, I said, how do you normally go about doing this? Because I'd like to see quite a few, each of you to do quite a few variations. And so the one of the guys there said, well, normally we just do one and we cycle that, do a little cycle of that, and that's it. And I said, and I kept pushing them. I go, could you do more than one? Could you do like 3 or 4? And so in the end, they go, all right, I'll do 2. I'll do 2. And he would say, and then I would say, wow, that looks so amazing. Could you do another? And so in the end, they were doing 5 or 6 or 7. And then the next guy would equally try and outdo the other. And before you knew it, they were creating an amazing variation of tracker jackers that were slowly docile, have just landed, others that were taking off, others that were in attack mode, that were very aggressive, moving very erratically. And so before I knew it, I had an assembly of the most amazing cycle of animations for the tracker jacker wasp. And when that was provided to the guy who was doing the massive, he had, so much information they could deal with, so much great stuff. So it ended up being really, something that was great, because I wanted all of this to engulf the main actress. When she was attacked and it kills her, it's sort of this is Glimmer. Is it Glimmer? Yeah. Mm-hmm. That it would really be something memorable for the audience, that we would feel for her and believe that this group of tracker jackers could kill, that it was that dangerous. And I wanted it, so I did a lot. I think on my website you can see very clearly the information that I put over the live action. And I used this as a guide to show Gary kind of how I was seeing this. And it was a great talking point, because it wasn't really something that was initially expected of me to do, but I managed to do it very quickly to give everyone, the animators as well as Gary and the producers, an idea of how the whole sequence could look if this tracker jacker group would assemble in a way that would seem like it was its own thinking thing. It was a collective, right? Being operated by the capital city. It wasn't these just wild, random tracker jacker wasp, but there was some sort of control. There was some sort of thinking behind them, So that was an exciting process for me to have a little dabble in that anyway. And as I say, I was very lucky that I had a wonderful group. I mean, they were great guys. I mean, they were amazing animators, and it was a privilege. So that was a magic moment for me. And again, the same animators had worked on the Mutts as well.
So cool.
I'm kind of interested, a comment that you said, how Gary kind of wanted things, I guess, to be more realistic in general, like the tracker jackers, than fantastical. And I'm wondering, was that sort of the case with the Mutts as well? Yeah. Because in the books, they're more kind of human-like. They're supposed to have like the eyes of the dead tributes, and
it was actually You're right, Emily. You're absolutely right. Bang on there. I think when I saw the first the first visual, the CG visuals of the mutated version of the kids, basically. So that it was quite horrific, because the premise was that these kids, although they died, they never died. They were just basically reborn into these mutated versions of these mutts, which were kind of had some sort of semblance of their former selves as humans. And probably, I think Gary, made probably a good call there by saying, this is a bit too horrific. It's going to creep people out. There's a part of me that would have liked to have seen that, it was when I was showing the actors, all the young actors, because they were on set, and sometimes they would swing by and I'd be sketching, I'd come over and they would, go, oh, cool. And I said, do you want to see something really creepy? And I would show them the design, the finished design, that it wasn't done by me, it was done by another creature outfit that had designed the CG versions of the mutated kids as mutts. And they were really creeped out, but they thought it was so cool. They went, wow, man, I look horrific, But, so I think, and the other thing is, the weird thing is, there are many stages that it took for the finished version of the mutts, but before the fur was put on, before they put the fur on the actual mutts, they looked way creepier. They were probably closer to what the original designs looked like, There seemed to be a little bit more, when you get these, I forget the name of the dogs or cats, where they have no fur, they look really creepy. And yeah, it's very, very much like that. So I would have preferred them not putting the fur on, as a, in terms of a design and a look that was something different. Because as soon as they put the fur on, they kind of looked almost a little bit cute, and a lot of the detail I felt was lost, because before the fur was on, there were things where you saw spasms when the mutt was puffing and looking left to right and moving, darting, waiting to see where the kids were. Every time they moved, there was a way that they could generate movement with the muscles, on the actual mud itself. And also we were kind of really putting in breathing cycles, so they would move and then move, that really kind of made it that much more aggressive and realistic, so it was very cool to see. I mean, it's incredible what these guys can do, with special effects now. I mean, yeah, reproducing elements that you would swear were real, I remember they tried to create when the hovercrafts were above the treetops and the guys were hiding, this was before the actual Hunger Games event. The Katniss and I forget the other character's name, they were hiding from the craft above the trees. And they had shot the live action of this, and they had some movement on the trees with the wind machine or whatever, but it was never quite right. They could never get it quite right to create enough movement so as to believe that this ship was very low, was just above the treetops. So they reproduced the whole of that shot in 3D, and you could not tell the difference. It was that amazing. It was that amazing. Yeah. So it's incredible. Layers and layers of atmosphere and how it's gradated, and they create fog and all kinds of and even some of the shots at night were really, I felt, were too bright, but they're able to kind of create the right lighting, in post that gives the finished look, and they got everything. I mean, the way the whole thing was lit in the end was great.
Dino, if you were in the arena, would you rather fight the dog mutts, the tracker jackers, or the career tributes?
I definitely wouldn't want to fight another human being. Yeah, I think that's. I mean, the whole idea of the Hunger Games is kind of a dark, ominous sort of reality, and in without getting into heavy political areas, it's one I sometimes feel we're not so far away from, in terms of recent events, people's rights being taken away and eradicated for some invisible horrific thing that's going to get everyone. You know, it's like the war on terror. It was a similar thing. This war on this invisible, you know, so and everything's designed, you know, to create a problem and then offer a solution. And before you know it, you're in a situation like the Hunger Games where there's one small group that controls the mass. So I wouldn't want ever to be forced in a position, a situation where I have to fight my fellow man, woman, or child in order to survive that. That would be a horrific thing. So equally, I wouldn't want to come face to face with a mutt. But I think, and if, you know, I guess with the, it's a hard question to ask. I was thinking about this earlier because I knew you were going to ask this question, but I guess I would probably take my chances with the tracker jacket, you know, because I think even if you're engulfed in all these things, if you stay, it goes against your instincts, but if you stay still or try and find a place, or if you're near water, or a lot of ifs and buts and coconuts, but I think as long as you're not challenging them, you know, I think with mutts, once they pick up the scent, they're on you, you know, and there's, you know, unless you can find somewhere high to be, it's so I think given the choice, I'll probably tackle the tracker jackers, and I would tackle Gary Ross's version, the smaller version, not the Dino version.
That would have been so scary if they were larger, but I think it would have been cool to like actually see them more. Well, I can't wait to rewatch these scenes too, because now I'm going to rewatch and just think about everything that you've been talking about.
Have all the knowledge now.
Yeah, and you know, like everything I was explaining, you know, about the mutts and the tracker jackers. Yeah, you can see that on my site in terms of how I approach. Because for me, the best way to approach how I'm going to supervise is to sketch something out to show, because an image, a drawing can say 1,000 words, or it can really convey visually, of course, how you want to see something. And so for the, I think for the animators, it provided, you know, a fairly good guide, and as I say, it also helped to inform Gary, you know, how things could go, because he was quite clear that he wanted a lot of this stuff blocked out first, so we could talk about it and discuss ways to, you know, improve.
Thanks so much, Emily and Holly, for the questions. Really nice questions. Nice chatting with you. I just want to take a quick break. I think it's a good time to do our giveaway. So I'm going to share my screen, and maybe Dino can talk a little bit about that piece in particular.
This is a panel, one of many panels, as the tributes managed to get onto the cornucopia, and then there's a dramatic series of shots where the mutts are grabbing for the guys. And in fact, at one point, you know, they one of the I think, yes, the alpha male with the arrow manages to scrape Peter's foot, so he's slightly injured there, but yeah, they just managed to get there on time. And again, Gary was very, very clear that he wanted this conversion as they reached the cornucopia, with the mutts coming from one side and our kids, you know, running, you know, in the same direction to try and get to the cornucopia first. So this panel here was just one of quite a few that I ended up with as I got them on top of safety, basically on top of the cornucopia.
So for those who don't know, this is a giveaway that we originally published in the Dino Athanassiou Instagram page. If you don't follow Dino yet, make sure to follow on Instagram, dino.athanassiou. So I've got the comment picker right here, and this is the post. Let's see. So I'm gonna copy the link with all the entries, put in here. Let's see what happens. This is our first giveaway.
Like a drum roll.
Yeah, yeah, nice. We'll probably add that afterwards. Yeah.
Okay, number of minimum mentions. So to enter, you had to mention 3 people, tag 3 people in one comment. Drums.
Drum roll.
And who do we have here? Janelle Lee. Congratulations.
Well done. Well done. Congratulations.
Okay,
Well, I hope
Janelle,
you'll be very happy with the drawing panel, and congratulations on winning. Yeah, well done.
yeah, so Janelle, please message us on Dino.Athanassiou Instagram to claim your prize, and we will have it mailed to you. Congratulations.
If you don't want it, I'll take it too. I mean, I will share it.
Such a
There you
cool
go.
storyboard, yeah.
Yeah, you better be quick then, because you already have people claiming here. Okay. For everyone else, if you are not following us on Instagram, please make sure to do so. Again, Dino.Athanassiou. And also, please do subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit that bell notification. And feel free to comment as well. If you want us to talk about anything specific, please feel free to add to the comments. Or if there's anything particular that you like, feel free to share that with us. I'll be happy to make videos focusing on what you guys are interested in watching. Now, I do have a few more questions here that were sent by Gracie Gray from Attributes Collection Instagram page. Question number 1, what was your favorite storyboard to draw, to plan out?
I would say the alpha male mutt as it was leaping towards Peter, and then that was quite a tricky one to try and work out, and to kind of please Gary, because I think he had something in mind in terms of impact, and so I was happy that he was happy with that. So yeah, I would say the section there where Peter gets attacked for the first time. Are
you going to be working on the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes movie?
Well, no one's approached me yet. I'd be more than happy to help, to work on it, but no one's approached me yet, so not at the moment, no. But okay. You never know what's around the corner.
So there you go. Hurry up, get in touch with Dino so we can get this going.
I have my pencil ready.
Dino, what were the locations you visited during the filming, and which one was your favorite besides Gary's apartment?
Sorry. Oh yeah. Gary's trailer. I was at some of the capital city part, or I think it's either the capital city or it's another area. I know there was some sort of construction there, but the cornucopia was pretty awesome to be around that. And the rest really was mostly in the woodland area, where the chase takes place. Both chases, the mutt attack and the tracker jacker, because those were the two main areas that I was dealing with. And when I got back to Australia, then occasionally I would come up with a few roughs in terms of the layout look of the city, and to give the guys an idea of how certain the kind of overall look could be. But all of that was handled by different departments. But so it was just occasionally they would say, Dino, can you sketch up something? Because Gary has something in mind. We're not quite sure what he wants. And so, yeah. But I would say, yeah, just being around the cornucopia area and knowing what was going to take place, and then being there when the actual the beginning of the attack of all the kids, the very first running was pretty awesome. It was pretty amazing. And you know what? The funny thing is, I never told anyone this, but I saw the very first take or the very first version, and it looked like 300, right? You know the film 300? It was full of guts. I mean, you saw blood everywhere, and they had to tone all of that down. It was just a bit too graphic. But that was horrific, and in many respects, it's probably it's good, that they never went with that version, because it was really bloody. It was so bloody. So somewhere that version or that particular scene exists,
Is there any scene you wish you had done differently on the storyboard?
Not really, because the thing is, you work at your maximum capacity. You work within the deadline that you're given. You work with the direction you're given. And so, I'm happy to say that for me, I struck the right chord with the work that I did for Gary and for Sheena. They seemed to be happy with what I was producing. In fact, a lot of the times I was asked to do things after the initial board and after the blocking. It would then go to previs. Another company was producing the previs, and sometimes Sheena would come back to me and say, Dina, can you go over the previs? We're not really happy with the previs, and can you reblock that? So it was a process, an organic process that kind of worked for me. So to say, oh, I wish I could go back and change this, that, and the other, offhand, I can't think of anything that I would want to change. You kind of work within that time frame you're given, and you do the best within that. It's kind of like someone saying, you've only got a weekend to storyboard this sequence. So you work your ass off to finish that sequence in a weekend. And then suddenly the producer comes back and says, oh, great news, we've got an extra 2 weeks. And you go, well, that's no good, because now I've roughed everything and I've worked for that deadline. I'm going to have to unravel everything. But chances are you wouldn't maybe make that many changes even if you were given another week or two. Right. I think your first initial explosive version of what you're going to do is probably usually the right way.
It's kind of going back to the hovercraft thing.
Well, but you see, that's something that I kind of knew the way that was going to go. I knew. Because, like I say, it happened to be a political situation whereby people within that setup were told to stay in their box, right? If that makes sense. Don't deviate. That we're in control. That's not your department. Instead of it being a little bit more open to say, well, you know what? Hey, what do you think? You were in on this meeting. Did you do a quick let's have a look? Actually, that seemed to be closer to what, it wasn't that kind of thing. And as a result, it's that particular setup lost quite a bit of traction and quite a lot of, I guess, respect, so it's sort of, sometimes these things happen. And although you can see it, it's not always your place to say, oh, I think you're going to make a mistake or you're going to go in a slightly different direction. They have to learn that themselves, in a way. Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense, but
Right on. Last question from Grace Gray. Who else did you get to work alongside when planning the storyboards?
As I say, with Sheena Dugal, who was the VFX supervisor for Lionsgate on the film. Incredible talent, and there was nice magic there in terms of, as I said, the camaraderie, and the same with Gary. And I was very, very, very privileged to be sandwiched with those two great talents. So I would have to say Gary and Sheena. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Okay, thank you, Gracie Gray from Attributes Collection Instagram page. Thanks so much for sending us the questions. I do have a couple of questions for Dino from myself. Now, Dino, which sequence were you talk about quite a few, which or how many sequences you were actually involved in planning and supervising? And how did you go about beginning the process of each sequence in terms of the production itself?
Okay. Well, the two main key sequences on Hunger Games was, as I said, the Tracker Jacker sequence and the Mutt attack. And the first thing I did was basically to start storyboarding and designing the shots even before they were actually shot in live action. And often, like even in Space Jam, it's a back and forth process, where I would design something or storyboard something. It will then go to the producers and directors. And if they like it, and if it has elements of live action with animated elements, they'd shoot the live action referencing the storyboards. Then once the live action would would be shot, I would take those shots and start adding the animated elements, blocking that out. So it's a bit of back and forth. So that was a basic process. And then once I had that, then I had something that I could inform my crew with, give them a guide of how the animated elements would combine and link with and sync with the live action. So that's basically the process.
Yeah, thanks for that. One last question from myself, Dino. Did you get Jennifer Lawrence's phone number by any chance?
She was very, very sweet, very professional, and in fact, all of them were amazing. It's kind of the great thing about the live action shoot, the actors and actresses, the crew members, is everyone knew their role, everyone knew their job. They were all willing to put 150% into it. Jennifer had a double that would do some of the stunt and sequences, and she was great too. Again, incredibly professional. But often Jennifer would sit there and read lines with the co-actors, even though she wasn't in the shot, just to help them along. And and that one lovely photograph I got with Jennifer Lawrence, I said to you, "Hey Jennifer, do you mind if I get a showing with you?" And she went, "Sure." Instead of just standing there like that, she grabs me and puts her arm around my waist, and it's just that she was just a really nice person, and extremely professional. And at that time, I think it was all of 22, 23, something like that. So I knew straight away, her career would go really well, and that, very mature for her age, and
good for her. Good for her.
Yeah. She's great. I mean,
well
all of them.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Thanks so much, Dino.
Thank you.
A couple of questions for Holly and Emily about collecting. So I see you've got a bunch of stuff behind you. Is there any particular stuff, Hunger Games or in general, if you want to talk about, that you collect?
As much as I can. One of my favorite things to collect is foreign editions of the books. So that's like a bunch of what I have behind me is the Hunger Games in all different languages. But from the movies,
have you got a Brazilian one yet?
I do not have one from Brazil.
Okay. So maybe on my next trip I can grab one for you.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Yeah, I'll add it to my shelf.
Emily, I noticed you got the picture I took of Jennifer Lawrence there.
Yeah, I love this photo. I think there's been a couple photos of her reading books on set.
Yeah.
I loved it.
I loved it too. I mean, I saw her, just quietly just reading there, and it was just a golden moment. And I snapped one shot of her, and I was very happy with it because it just, really, when they say a great photograph captures a moment in time, and that definitely was that, for me. It's and some of the shots there with Gary adjusting the glimmer prop, where after the attack on, and that just kind of illustrated perfectly the attention to detail that guy had for everything, and his direction he would give to the actors was lovely. He did command a lot of respect, and he knew his stuff, but it's nice just to see that photograph there.
I have the one of him riding the bike.
Oh, lovely.
Cornucopia, which it cracks me up. So I had to get that. It's not up here. It's not displayed yet, but I love that one.
That's nice, Emily, because I mean, he would in between breaks, because he was on a bit of a health kick there, so he was just eating, raw peanuts or nuts, healthy nuts. So we'll be chatting, and he'll be like, just throwing a few nuts in his mouth as he would speak, and then like between breaks, get on his bike and just ride around the set, and in his own little world.
Anything else to share? Any?
I don't know. I think that I'm most excited because I was very young when the movies came out.
You still are very young, both of you.
Yes.
So very, very, very lovely to see you.
I'm talking like middle school, Holly. So I wasn't out buying too much stuff. So like Emily said, anything I could get my hands on. But with the new Hunger Games movie, I'm just so excited to try and get my hands on something that I can afford now, like a movie prop or something like that.
Yeah.
The goal.
is there anything you'd like to see as fans, of Hunger Games, and also people who love to collect stuff? Is there anything that you would like to see us, particularly Dino, creating in terms of original art or digital art as well? Is there anything that comes to mind?
I just like, the first thing that comes to my mind is just coming up with more scenes. I don't know if you're able to read more of the books, or if you go back and enjoy them and enjoy a certain scene, even though it's not going to be made into a movie because it was already made into a movie, just making a storyboard for that. I think everyone would eat that up. I would.
That could happen. That could happen. I think it's like, if you have something specific in mind, then I'd love to see this section kind of boarded, or this is how it ended up in the film, or it'd be nice to see if it was, how would you have done it? That's something that would be cool to do, and or even an image, a panel or a drawing on a t-shirt. Robbie and I were talking about, what do you think guys would like out there, in terms of, if we continue to create some more art in other ways. Robbie was even talking about NFTs, and which is obviously tapping into kind of what we could be doing in the not too distant future. And but I like that idea, Holly. I like that idea. I think it's kind of cool, and it's sort of it would be again the closest thing to an actual hands-on bit of work, that you would do on a film, because I often you're given sections of the script, this is the section you need to be kind of thinking about, that needs to be kind of drawn up, and especially if it's got specific effects in it, or creatures, in a way, it would have been, like I say, I mean, in my mind, I have an idea of what some of the mutt scenes might have been, had they gone the route with the designs of the original designs, and that all almost conjures up, and again, I think there were versions of the script that I'd seen where you might have even had an intermediate sort of a section there where you might see a tribute going through that transformation, after being killed, and then they metamorphosize into one of these mutated versions of themselves. Quite a creepy thing, but that's probably a bit too horrific.
I have an idea of what would sell. So Catching Fire, there is a scene, there's no mutts in it or anything, but if you're looking for something that fans will love, Francis Lawrence left out the iconic rooftop scene from Catching Fire, and if you were to go back and just do a storyboard of the rooftop scene, what it would have been in Catching Fire, I can assure you fans would have been absolutely obsessed with that story.
Send me, if you get time, send me that section and I'll have a little gander at maybe if you can create enough of an excitement for something that was never created, then that might be something that, if there's enough of a group that want to get like sections of that, then why not? Could be something that we could all collaborate on, together. So
nice.
Something that I'd like to see, and this is just, dreaming big, is like a book of concept art and storyboards from the Hunger Games series. Like franchises like Harry Potter have all of these concept art books, and I know in the fandom we talk about that a lot, like why don't we have more of this, like the visual development behind the scenes stuff all kind of put together in one nice place that we can own and like have in our hands.
That's actually a great idea. In fact, I have I have all the original artwork in digital form anyway, all my artwork scanned in, and like I say, a lot of it is actually in on my website. So there are ways. I'll talk to Robbie about this more. In fact, we were talking about this this very thing more for, I guess, all the projects that I've worked on over the years, doing sections. But to do one specifically for, at least for me, my contributions on the first Hunger Game film, that's something that could happen, and then, alongside it, descriptions of how I came about producing that particular section, what it was for and why I did that. That might be something that fans would be interested, maybe.
I'd buy it.
Yeah. Anything.
All right. Yeah. And
well, you have to get a free one in the mail. Emily, come sign one, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think if one could create like a limited edition, a limited run. I could certainly talk to my brother, because he's in printing as well, and I often spoke to him about the idea of producing some of my art in book form. One could do a softback or do a hardback copy. Hardbacks to do a certain run, obviously they cost a certain amount, but I think that would be something that would be quite lovely. Certainly it would be flattering for me to put something together that people would be interested enough to want to purchase. That would be lovely.
Thanks for that nice suggestion. Right, is there anything else you'd like to talk about, or otherwise I think we're ready to wrap it up? Okay, Emily, Holly, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Dino. Please do follow Into the Arena podcast. I will put the link right below in the description. It's run by Holly and Emily. It's been, again, a pleasure to have you here. Good luck, and let's keep in touch. Have a nice day, everybody. Thank you for watching.
It's so lovely to meet you guys, and I hope to see you again. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you for watching. See you next time.